Okay, we're here with former Governor Scott Walker as well as the president of YAF. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, how are you enjoying CPAC so far?
Oh, I love it. I mean, see all this energy, particularly today. We've seen a lot of young people around, so it's a good sign. A really good feel, even though as one reporter asked me this morning, why you guys feel so upbeat when you're not in power in Washington? I said, because we're going to be soon be in power, I think, if the American people see what's at stake.
And what is YAF doing here at CPAC, and what do they hope to achieve, and do they have anything going on in the future?
Oh yeah, Young America's Foundation had a great presence. We've had working with students all over, because a good chunk of the people here are students. One of the exciting things, we just had Peter Schweitzer, of course, who's the author of Red Handed, a former alum of one of our conferences and now on our board. He spoke at our student luncheon. We had a packed hall and talked all about the research that he's done, not only about the Biden family, but about the woke U.S. corporations and others. We're basically in bed with China, and that was probably the highlight of the day, to hear him talk to that many students about it.
And you were on a panel as well. It was, let me get it right, Fighters on the Front Line, and my understanding is you were talking about the woke mob on campus. Could you share a little bit about what you talked on that panel?
Absolutely. Well, you see a combination of things. Sometimes it's just as simple as these woke professors. Good example is something that YAF exposed just this last semester. English teacher at Iowa State University, so not on the east or west coast, but right in the middle of the heart of America. She told the students there they couldn't write any papers opposing same-sex marriage, opposing abortion, or opposing Black Lives Matter, the organization, which is outrageous, just her radical view of the world. And we challenged that. Now, thankfully, it was in Iowa, so the leaders of the university system pushed back and said, no, that's a violation
Didn't go over too well.
of free speech. But the fact that that's happening all over the country, and not just in government-run institutions, in private schools and colleges and universities. So we're constantly pushing back on that. We're bringing conservative speakers to campus. We're putting their messages up on YouTube and other platforms. And we're really engaging and fighting not only for free speech rights, but then to get out and reach more young people, reach them at younger ages. We're going even into middle school. And most importantly, doing it in ways that are even better at getting our message out.
With woke professors like this and just ideology seeping into colleges, there's a little bit of a debate on the right now whether college as an institution, I'll say, is worth saving, whether it should be reformed or whether conservatives should just go on and form new colleges of their own, like Hillsdale. Where do you land on that argument?
I think I do both.
Okay.
I think you can cede any ground. So I love Hillsdale. We do partnerships with them. There's a handful, literally a handful of other universities and colleges like that, but we can't cede territory at the same time on places like the Ivy League, University of California system, even my own state, University of Wisconsin. So we put members in, we put chapters there, we bring speakers there. Oftentimes it's huge battles. I mean, for example, UC Berkeley, we work with students there to bring Ben Shapiro in. They didn't outright say no, but what they do is tricky. They said, well, you can't advertise, you can't have them speak after 3 in the afternoon, and we're going to charge you enormous amounts of money for security. Well, we took them to court, and we prevailed because free speech means uniform enforcement. And if we can win at UC Berkeley, we can win anywhere. The problem is we shouldn't have to go to court. I mean, this is something that should be enforced uniformly, whether you're conservative or liberal, but sadly these woke mobs just don't buy into it.
I mean, that's why you're going to college, presumably, is to learn new ideas, hear new things, challenge yourself a little bit, and that is really discouraging to see that.
Well, think about free speech is something that the Constitution defends and defines, and so it's legal, obviously, but it should be most revered in our college campus. To your point, I mean, that's where you go to be challenged. One of my sons went to the University of Wisconsin. People said, how can you go there? He came out more conservative because thankfully we gave him a good grounding. He then got plugged in with groups like YAF and College Republicans and others. And he came out stronger because his ideas were tested. He didn't take them for granted. Unfortunately, most campuses, most experiences are not that, because the left doesn't want to play by the rules. They don't want to play by the same rules as we do. They want you to only hear their point of view, because they know in the end they'll lose if you hear an objective observation of the left and the right. Think about this. Everywhere in the world history shows us, when communism and socialism have been tried in their truest sense, they've failed. Market-driven free enterprise always trumps capitalism and socialism.
And that's where I believe that conservatives have a leg up when they go to college campuses, is because they learn the left's arguments by being exposed to them and know how to counter them. The left doesn't know what the right thinks, so they don't know how to argue with
they
us.
don't care.
No, they don't. But I do want to ask you, with the students, because they only, for the most part, know what the left thinks, what are their conceptions about the right? What do they think we believe, and is there any way in which maybe that's our fault in some ways? Maybe we're coming across the wrong way or presenting ourselves the wrong way.
Well, on that latter point, I think it's a great reminder when people get upset that young people are overwhelmingly liberal, progressive, radical, whatever you want to call them. I don't blame the students. I don't blame the Gen Z generation. I blame the rest of us, saying we haven't done enough in our K through 12 education and our colleges and universities to demand that we actually have a level playing field. For all the talk about diversity, the only diversity lacking, truly lacking, is diversity of thought. You know, the most endangered species at a college campus is a conservative, be it a student, a professor, a speaker, you name it. And so, yes, we've got to take on that burden. It's why I'm at Young America's Foundation. People say, ever going to run for office again? I joke, I'm a quarter century younger than Joe Biden, so I got plenty of time. But for right now, the most important place I can be is working with young people, helping to get that message out. And as an optimist, I tell all your viewers, the good news is, when young people hear these ideas, there's a monumental shift in the right direction. We got to keep that up.
What do you think excites them about conservative ideas? What do you think is giving them that spark?
Well, I think freedom is, young people are two things that people set aside politics. There's two fundamental things I find with this new generation. They like authenticity and they believe in fairness in general, not just in politics. And so they want people to not talk at them or over them, but talk right with them, listen to what they're hearing about, and then respond to those concerns. But then on fairness, for example, I tell somebody, hey, if you go take a job in college, you make $1,000 and the government takes $700 of it, people go, oh, that's not fair, why would I work? I said, well, that's what the tax rates were at the top end before Reagan was president. Oh, I hadn't thought about it. When you tell people, no matter what they think about social issues, when you say someone who was born biologically as a man should be able to swim against people who were born as women, because that's not fair with the way they're built any more than a 19-year-old shouldn't be able to compete against a 10-year-old in the pool. You'll go, yeah, that's not fair. So I think for us, we've got to reclaim as conservatives the fairness issue. The left has claimed that for some time. Oh, pay your fair share, do this, do that. When they talk about that with taxes, I say, well, sure, let's do a flat tax. That means if you make 100 times more than me, you pay 100 times more in taxes. What's more fair than that?
Yeah. And finally, I just want to ask you, you launched the long game at YAF. Can you explain a little bit about what that is? Because I've noticed with conservatives, there's this idea that the culture is going to shift overnight with the next election. Say Donald Trump comes in again, or Ron DeSantis comes in, or whoever, and all our problems are going to be solved, maybe politically for a moment, but culturally the issues are still there. So first, I think that's what the long game's getting at. And why is there that tick in the conservative thought process?
Well, again, on the latter, it's in reverse. I think part of it's because we don't put our faith in the government. So people on the left overwhelmingly put their faith in the government and in institutions. Conservatives, we put our faith in the people, the individual, and the family. And so once we win an election, do our thing, we move on, we go back to our lives. They spend their time overwhelmingly consumed with how do we get more power. And so they're constantly looking at ways to do this. And it's why they're willing to do it over the long haul. Saul Alinsky, 1960s, started laying out the fruits of many of these plans to march through our colleges and universities. They've now used the teachers union to take over our schools. They're in culture and big tech communications. You are so right in the sense that the long game for us is reminding people it's going to take more than a media cycle, probably take more than even a presidential cycle. We've got to have that doesn't mean we concede the battle at the moment. We've got to be engaged there too. But long term, this long game plan is to get to every campus in America, to not only reach more students, but to start younger. We're starting in even in the middle school grades to respond to the indoctrination. And then the third component of it is to go out and do an even better job of communicating once we reach those students. We can turn things around, but we've got to have a concerted effort, and we can't do it alone at YAF. It's got to be working with other conservative, freedom-loving partners.